Hi, everyone. I'm Shelley Lyle.
And I'm Brian Avery.
And welcome to Voices from the Field, a podcast brought to you by the Department of Sport Management at the University of Florida. This podcast was created to share the career journeys of sport industry professionals. Our hope is that you learn the ins and outs of different sport industry professions. We're excited to be with all of you this week and with our special guest, Greg Stolt. Greg is the Vice President of International Operations for the National Basketball Association.
Greg received his Bachelor's of Exercise Science from the University of Florida and his Master's of Business Administration from the University of Hawaii. While at the University of Florida, he played basketball as a forward. He also played 6 years of professional basketball in the Dominican Republic, Spain, Belgium, France, Japan, Australia, and the NBA G League. He was the assistant manager for Sumito Heavy Industries Limited for 2 years before he moved into his current role as Vice President of International Operations for the NBA. He has been with the NBA for 11 years. Thank you for being with us tonight, Greg.
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning, everyone.
Definitely. Good morning.
Yes, we are recording at 7 o'clock Eastern Time and 7 a.m. in China time. Is that
Actually,
right?
8 a.m. 8 a.m. right now, but soon to be 7 a.m. So good timing for me.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're so glad you could join us. Going off just your background, you played professional basketball, you played collegiate basketball, then professional basketball, and now you work for the NBA. Can you give us a brief overview of your career journey? And then what was the transition like from being an athlete to operations?
Sure. So, playing basketball at Florida, I think everybody's goal, or most players' goals, are to see how good they can become and to see what level they can play at. And coming out of Florida, I think everybody thinks, let me see if I can make it to the NBA. The benefit of basketball and the opportunity that basketball provides is basically every country in the world has a professional league. So right out of college, I got an agent. Agent gave me some opportunities right away in Dominican Republic, which led on to Europe. Over a period of 6 years, I traveled around from Europe, Asia, Australia, back to the United States, kind of seeking how far this could take me and how high of a level I could make it. A couple injuries to my knee cut my career shorter than I wanted to. And so I ended up playing about six and a half years. But that, from a basketball side, it did provide me some time to think, what should I do if I don't play basketball anymore? What do I want to do? Where should I go? Where will this all lead me? And when I did end up playing basketball, I'd spent some time in Hawaii as a kid. Always wanted to go back to Hawaii. That's what led me to grad school there, which I knew that would buy me a couple of years to figure out, do I want to stay in Hawaii? Do I want to go back to the mainland? I really enjoyed the international piece of basketball. Should I consider opportunities in Asia, because things were growing in Asia, particularly in China at that time? And what I want to do. So the University of Hawaii actually provided me with an opportunity to connect with quite a few businesses in Asia Pacific. I didn't want to stay in sports. I wanted to try something else. And a Japanese heavy industrial manufacturer in Tokyo, Japan, was my opportunity. In Japan, I worked for a couple of years. We were selling gearboxes. I had no idea what those were when I started. I have a better idea now, but it was a couple of years working in a corporate environment, which I never had, in an engineering firm, which was completely different from playing basketball and being with teammates and being with coaches. And it really opened up my world to corporate, international. We were based in Tokyo, but we had business all over the world, and the dynamics between headquarters and your regional offices. After a couple of years in Japan, floating around the world, visiting offices and factories and so forth, I had an opportunity. The NBA came up. And at that time, about 11 years ago, the NBA we were globalized and really extending our reach, but we weren't as much as we are now. And so the NBA in New York needed somebody that had some office experience, some corporate experience, but somebody that understood the game, that had played abroad, understood the dynamics of cultures. And at that time, I started my career with the NBA, 3 years in New York, working with the International Basketball Operations Department, really focused in China, which we had an office of about 50 people at that time, in India, which we did not have an office. So 3 years in New York, but most of my summers would be 3 months in India, 3 months in China, kind of going back and forth. Then the opportunity to move to China came up, which I moved here about 8.5 years ago. I was in Beijing, and now I'm in Shanghai. And that's a snapshot of the career and the pathway that really started with basketball, and it opened up many more doors for me.
You know, Greg, you said that you were trying to get away from sports at some point. Was there an intent to that, or was it, what was the purpose? Were you just kind of done, or are you seeking just other opportunities and maybe, kind of circle back eventually to sports?
So I played my whole life, starting as a kid. You kind of play whatever sport the season is. As I got older, I specialized in basketball, and post high school, college, and then 6 years of professional overseas. It's all I'd known, and it's all I'd been around, and I really appreciated the experience. And I knew at some point in time I wanted to stay in it. But right after basketball, I felt like I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to meet different people with different mentalities and mindsets and experiences. I think that's one of the drivers to go to grad school. And then out of that, just to see what my experience basketball had given me and where that could lead me into a different industry. And ultimately, it was just to connect, learn new things, meet new people, and see if I knew I could always go back into sports, whether it's coaching or sports administration, but do I want to stay in sports, or do I want to try something else? And ultimately, that was the reasoning why I wanted to try different pathways.
Got it. Perfect.
Yeah, and speaking to the international experience, it sounds like you were pretty drawn to be overseas. Did you always have that desire to travel and to be in other cultures, or was that something you kind of grew into as you had those experiences playing over pro?
Sure. To be honest with you, I thought Gainesville, Florida was the center of everything. And it wasn't, that. And then obviously when you leave, you graduate, you want to stay in the States because it's what I knew. And obviously the NBA was the center of basketball as well. So that's a pinnacle. And for me, that was, deep inside, you kind of hope, but it wasn't good enough. And I realized that fairly quickly. Probably the first year, Dominican Republic was a bit of an eye-opener for me. And then going to Europe, leaving Florida, where, as a college athlete, you have somewhat safe. You're there, you have coaches, you have facilities, you have academic advisors, you have support staff around you that really are there focused on your best interest, which is also their best interest. And when you go and become a pro, it's really producing and production. And if you don't produce, then they have somebody waiting to take your spot immediately. And so it wasn't quite as comfortable. It wasn't quite as easy. Had to kind of figure out, the business side of it, the politics side of it. And probably the first year and a half of my experience abroad was not easy. By the time I started playing in Japan, that's when I realized this is pretty cool. People fly here for vacation. They spend money out of their own, out of their hard work. They actually spend money to come to Japan for vacation or go to Europe for vacation. And I realized this is a life opportunity that people don't get. Let me take advantage of it. So it took me a couple of years. And then within those couple of years, I realized there is an opportunity. You start reading about globalization and companies that are spread throughout the world, and not just the NBA, but everybody. And you see there is opportunities there that you should try to take advantage of, particularly me playing basketball abroad.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I think a lot of our students are interested in positions and operations and things like that, and just aren't as aware of the international component and the opportunities out there in different leagues, but also just in different organizations. I actually lived overseas as well and worked in athletics. And so I love that you're on, because it's such another encouragement, another person to speak to what it's like to live in another culture and to use your experience, degree, sports background. So that's awesome.
One thing you realize that, I'm American and I love my country, but really quickly when you're in Menorca, Spain, or Niigata, Japan, or Tasmania, Australia, there's different mindsets, different philosophies, different approaches, and really quickly. And the one thing I love about it is you learn a lot of things that perhaps we could take and utilize in the United States and apply to our lives. And I've appreciated that in my time playing abroad and working and living.
Yeah, so true. And I think the culture, I worked at an international school in Kigali, Rwanda, and I just said the experience and the education I learned from that year and a half, like you can't get it anywhere else. I think it's just an amazing time. You can't get it in a classroom, I would say. I think just working with different cultures, kids from all over the world. Yeah, I agree completely. So I think it's great for our students to study abroad, but even to go consider working. For sure.
I agree. I would recommend it for everyone. At least try a year.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No, I'm absolutely envious of the places you've been. So incredible journey you're on so far.
Yeah. And so your current role right now, can you give us what are your daily duties, functions, responsibilities for the MBA? And then what you really enjoy about your job and find the most interesting?
Sure. So we have offices globally. We now have an office in India, which we didn't have when I started, but we have India, besides headquarters in New York, we have India, London, South Africa, Mexico, Rio. I may be missing a couple markets here. China. We have Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and we have, I think that's covered most of it. And basically, in each one of those markets, we have a business team, we have an operations team, and everybody's a little bit different based off the interest of basketball in those markets, the access to the game. So the first thing that we look at in our markets is, can people turn on the TV or pick up their mobile phones and watch the NBA or basketball? And that's the very basis of our business. And then if they can, the next level is, are people watching, and what do we have to do to get to watch them more? And the direct correlation with long-term hardcore basketball fans is throughout the world, most people have played basketball at some point in their life. And so the next, after accessing the NBA on TV or digital, now it's, can people play? And in China, we were very fortunate about 20 years ago. Yao Ming was the guy that took the NBA from a popular brand and an interesting sport to now it became somebody for the country to root for. And so Yao really gave us a bump. During that time, we also had a player, Yi Jianlian, who both played, Yao and Yi played together. And so interest was through the roof. And during that period of time, also Kobe Bryant was coming up. Michael Jordan was coming to the end of his career. So we have a big population of fans in China that watch the game because of Yao. And then they started becoming fans of other people, other teams, because of Yao. Now, given the lack of players that have come out of China, we've only had a few in the last 5-10 years. Our goal now is, what do we have to do to get more people playing? And then how do we get the higher level players play? How do we get the highest level players playing at a higher level so they can actually pursue the NBA as a career? And so my goal in China is working with my team here, coming up with programming, different events, different things that we could do in China with our partners to get more kids playing and then get kids playing at a higher level. So everything from grassroots, here's the ball, it bounces, here's the rules of the game, here's the 30 teams, here's the locations of them, here's the 6 Chinese players that have been in the NBA, to Team China, what can we do to help you guys prepare for the Olympics or for the FIBA Asia World Championship or FIBA Asia Championships? What can we do to support your referee development in your professional league? So we're everything from grassroots to the very elite. We're working on programming to support the growth of the game here.
Very cool. That's great. I think it's a little different too than operations. I think students have a different view of the production of a game maybe as operations. So thanks for clarifying that. And
we have, normal times, no COVID, our busy season is from the end of the NBA season till October. Our benchmark event is we have 2 games, preseason games in China every October, usually in Shanghai and one other city. But we'll, in normal years, have 20 NBA players, 15 NBA coaches. We'll send referees from China to NBA Summer League to attend our Summer League training camps. And it's just we're on the road and we're busy and we're slammed throughout the summertime doing these different programming, which is also a lot of fun for me because it gets me out of the office and gives me a chance to get back on the court and see how things are done and working with local administrators and influencers trying to help grow the game here. So it's not quite only running events. It's events plus many other programs that we do here in China.
Very cool.
Greg, how are you all measuring success in regards to, increase in those that are interested in the sport or even playing it? I mean, is there a specific, number that you've assigned to it, or percentage of the population, or what are you doing to kind of measure that?
So originally we had partnerships with the Ministry of Education in China, and we've had partnership with the Chinese Basketball Association for coaches' education and training. And so those are kind of original flagship programs where we can measure participation. And so at the very lowest level, it's just getting people teaching and training and educating and participating in basketball programming that we deliver. Okay. Now I think we're taking a step back and looking at, it's a great question. We're actually in the middle of taking a step back and looking at those programs. Can we do better with less? Can we monetize them? Are there partners out there that would be interested in sponsoring some of these things so they're not just straight on investments? And what can we do better to kind of increase scale and scope of our efforts with the CBA, with the Ministry of Education here? So, but originally it's just base participation. And I think the challenge with just participation is we haven't been able to really clarify in detail exactly how influential those programs are. People participate. Does that mean they're going to participate without us telling them to participate in the future, or are they just doing it because we're running something for them officially at that point in time? And I think as we grow our program here, we'll have better understanding of what our KPIs are and how to evaluate the success of our investments here.
Okay. Is there an end game in mind with respect to maybe an NBA league in China or a team, or what's the objective?
So I think that was, if you look at articles 15, 20 years ago, I think that was the plan. I mean, the ultimate challenge with all of our regional offices outside the United States is we don't have a product. We're a brand, we're a league. And we don't really have a connection with China in our league at this point in time. And so we're basically, to some level, we're selling Americana.
Okay.
And I think at this current point in time, our theory, our hypothesis is if people play at a certain level, they'll become fans and they'll become consumers. So there's multiple levels. We want people playing. As a result, they'll become consumers when they become adults. And then obviously, if we can get players consistently from China to consider going to the U.S. to pursue the NBA, and those players can go to the NBA and stick and have great careers, now we have a real reason for fans to tune in. Mm-hmm. Locally. From a China standpoint, they have somebody to root for and really be exposed to the NBA a little bit more thoroughly than they are right now.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, in your career, you're 11 years with the NBA at this point. How have you evolved as a leader, an innovator, a person?
So it's been really interesting from New York to Beijing, now to Shanghai. There's different roles and responsibilities. In China, I've had a little bit more of a opportunity to manage and oversee a department, manage staff. I've had prior to COVID, I had 8 or 9 coaches throughout the country working with us. They've not been able to come back because of COVID. Okay. And so the responsibilities here in China are much different than the U.S. for me as a leader. I think the biggest thing from my experience is working with locals and really respecting and in understanding the culture, understanding the perspective that they're coming from, as they have a better knowledge base and sense of how things operate better than me. And so coming over here wasn't one of those things where I'm going to come over, take over, run the show in my department. Is more of talking to my staff and understanding where they're coming from and understanding what their goals and objectives are and some of the things that they needed help with to help them reach their goals, because they knew China better than I did. And then obviously I think from that I've been able to grow and have a deeper sense of empathy and sympathy for people, and how to kind of push and how to kind of motivate people based off of their daily experiences that they have to go through here in China.
All right, perfect. When you pivoted from your athlete lifestyle and or career, what did you do, or what would you have liked to have known, if you will, that you didn't know at the beginning of your career? What would that nugget be, if you will, that would have been helpful as you progressed?
So, up until I retired from basketball, I never thought anything of the business side. And taking a step back, before I worked in Japan, I didn't think anything about. I just thought machines were made and they just showed up, and they're, if you need a motor, you get a motor, and you call this company up and the motor shows up. I didn't think about how intricate the process was and how many things were involved to create a motor. And same with the NBA. When I was playing in the G League or in Japan or in Europe, I didn't know how much time and effort and people were behind the scenes to make just a game happen, to put a team together, to market and promote, selling tickets, to booking gyms, and so those type of things. I was just into the game. I was into playing and trying to become as good as I possibly could, and trying to elongate my career as long as I could because I enjoyed playing. And so when I took a step back and went to grad school for a couple of years, and then started my career, I didn't understand all the moving pieces that were involved in the corporate lifestyle and the corporation, whether it's MBA, which we're running a league, or Sumito Heavy Industries, which is heavy industrial manufacturing. And so that's one thing I probably could have better prepared myself for. But maybe it was good that I went into these things blindly and just kind of figured it out along the way. I'm not sure if there's a correct pathway there.
Gotcha. I respect that.
Yeah, and you spoke about asking a lot of questions, especially when you're in another culture, which I think is awesome. I felt the same way living overseas. It's like I don't have the answers. Like people in the culture, whether they've lived there and are Americans or they are people of the culture, it's so great to ask those questions because we learn so much, right, about the way they run their organizations and their programs and all of that. And so what are some other resources that have helped you along the way, especially on an international level?
Sure. So this is one thing, going in from basketball, transitioning from basketball into grad school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to transition a little bit out of sports. And when I was in Hawaii, at University of Hawaii, and I was working some odd side jobs to kind of pay rent and so forth, I tried to connect and network with every single person I could. And it would be the Honolulu Chamber of Commerce to Board of Governors meetings to city, North Shore city, city planning meetings, to business leaders coming in and out, to speakers that came and spoke to us. Just wanted to hear what they had to say. I wanted to understand what their career pathways were, if they knew anybody I could talk to, and so forth. And eventually those grinding and connecting with people, it domino affected where, I'd fill up a schedule throughout my whole 2-year period at UH, and then I was in Japan as an intern prior to being offered a full-time job. And even in Tokyo, I was just meeting with anybody and everybody I could. And out of that, I think that really helped me understand the value of networking and knowing people, because that ultimately is what got me my job in Japan. but also, just understanding there isn't one real. I mean, you go to UF and then you get this job, or you go to Ivy League and you get this job. There isn't one pathway, and everybody has their own. And I think it's just a matter of staying disciplined, motivated, persevering, dealing with the ups and downs. As you can continue to grind and connect and network, opportunities will pop up. And so for me, that was the key thing. Nobody really told me. For me, I had no idea what to do. And I figured the easiest thing would be, because I didn't have an accounting background, or I didn't have I wasn't working in New York for a couple of years prior to coming to grad school. I just played basketball. And for me, the easiest and most logical would just be, let me reach out to as many people as I can to see if those can lead to something. And that was my plan.
And did you feel like you wish you would have reached out sooner, like while you were still playing?
I think it's, and this is something that students ask me, and a lot of students from China that are kind of, in the middle of their undergrad or in their grad school in the United States. I think a lot of people think you work hard in school and you get good grades and bam, you'll have opportunities. And same with me playing basketball. Again, I was focused on the game and maintaining my career and seeing how far I could go. But also understanding a basketball career, you're lucky if you play till you're 32, 33. If you're playing till 40, you're really a one percenter. And for me, 6 years was good, and maybe not as long as I wanted to. But I didn't do a whole lot of that when I was playing, and partially because when I had 2 or 3 months off, I wanted to kind of hang out, see my family, prepare for the next season. And for me, I think the earlier you do those things, you connect, you meet with people, you read, you look at the newspaper, you see what the opportunities are, and kind of mold your next steps. Unless you're sure you want to be for me, if you want to be a coach, that's one way. But if you want to look at other opportunities, I think it's really important to kind of open up and start studying and seeing what those opportunities are while you're a student, or for me, while I was a basketball player.
Yeah, that's great. And so speaking about people and networking, who are 3 people you would say have been the most influential in your career journey?
So I would say, for me, the most influential people, certainly my parents. They were, they kind of raised me and they molded me and then really put me in a position where I could have opportunities, whether it's pursuing basketball, going to the University of Florida, and so forth. I think the two people that I refer to often in my when I think about things and when I think about managing people and when I think about managing a department and working with others in the company, I think about my high school coach, who's in Alabama, and I refer to my experiences with him as a high school athlete, and just kind of think about how he was running a team and as a teacher and working in a school, and really creating a program and a culture down in Alabama, where he's been for 30 years and been very successful. The other person I think of is Coach Donovan, who I played for 3 years at Florida, and him coming in and really taking the program from kind of, it's an average basketball program with some success prior to his arrival to becoming a top 25 program for the last 25 years. And seeing how he came in and how he, his motivation, direction, his leadership, and how he worked with people, and the tactics that he used to motivate and really create the program to change and become what it is today. So I think about those, certainly my parents, but then my high school coach and my college coach, and what they did, and the things that they did to really to make things happen. So those would probably be the most influential. I wouldn't say I keep in touch outside my parents. I don't keep in touch so often with Coach Donovan or my high school coach, but I do occasionally. And obviously I keep in touch with their progress, and what they're still doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Billy Donovan has left a legacy. There's no question.
That is absolutely true. So regarding your career in the sport industry, if there was a myth that existed within the the profession or the field, What might that be, and how would it be debunked, or how should it be debunked?
Sure. So, I've heard this from a few people. I'm not sure if it's true or not because I haven't pursued anything outside of the MBA since I've been here. But it's sports management, sports marketing it's a real niche market, and you develop and learn a lot of skill sets that are not transferable to any other industry. And sure, that's true if you're an engineer. If you want to go from the MBA and build cars or build airplanes or build, get into creating apps or whatever. But I do think there's a lot of things that you can learn and that you learn in this industry or other industries, and you could transfer back and forth. If you're a lawyer, if you're in finance, sure, you need certain skill sets, you need certain degrees in education to do those jobs. But in our business, my world is a bit of a niche. I played basketball, I understand international basketball, but in the end, my job is really connecting with people and developing relationships and working alongside them and identifying people that can make things happen. And I think that's something that you can do if you played basketball, if you didn't play basketball. And I think the same goes for our digital media team. I think it's the same goes for our global marketing partnerships teams. Those are things that if you work in the MBA, I think those skill sets and things that you learn can be transferred to other industries. And so that to me would be a myth that I'd question. I haven't tried pursuing another career path, but I'll let you know if I do, and if what I've learned here applies. But I think there's a lot of things that you can do in this industry that would absolutely apply to other industries.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I appreciate the insight because I've heard the myth as well, and to hear from a professional saying, no, there's transferable skills in this industry. I appreciate that feedback and insight. Thank you.
Awesome. And then we're going to go back to the culture piece. And so what is it like living and working in a different culture? And what advice would you give students considering working overseas?
So I would, I guess the first thing I would say, do it. If you have an interest in Europe, Africa, India, wherever it is, like Asia, and you're thinking about it and you're on the fence, the same thing is living in Hawaii. Everybody should try it for a year, and then, both for different reasons, but you should do it just to experience it. So, for this, I've been overseas more than I've been in the United States now professionally. I worked for 3 years in New York, and I played 6 years in Europe and Japan and Australia. And now I've worked in Japan for 2 years, in China for 9. And for me, I think the biggest thing with China was, 9 years ago, it's the biggest market that the NBA has outside the United States. It's only getting bigger. From my perspective, I kind of dabbed in and out of it when I was in New York. I had some taste tests, so I kind of knew a little bit what I was getting into. Obviously, visiting is different than living, but I realized China is a major market. China's here to stay. Maybe I can come and learn a little bit about it and kind of enrich my experiences and my education. And in the end, if and when my wife and I move back to the United States, we'll be better off because of the experience that we have. I think it's really important to go in with a very open mind. Don't expect when you land in Shanghai, China, for it to be like Los Angeles or Houston or Chicago. Or if you land in Tokyo, people are going to speak English, or McDonald's sells the same thing. Don't worry about that. Get in, connect with locals, and take advantage of the opportunity. And don't kind of sit and mingle with your expat community. Get in and connect, and just try to get as much out of the experience as you can.
Awesome. And what you speak Japanese and Mandarin?
I do. I speak Japanese, though I haven't spoken in about 11 years consistently since I left. But I do, and my Chinese is survival. So I realize it's shame on me, but I thought there's no way I'm learning Japanese and Chinese. There's a little bit of carryover in the characters. I can understand reading some Chinese. But the speaking part is I kind of stopped at that. And I stopped classes a little bit prematurely here.
Gotcha. Okay. And the next question might be a little different because you are in China, but it can stump people from time to time because those in the industry of sports, as you know, are really dedicated to their craft. But do you have a formula for how to stay healthy and balanced within a high performance environment?
So this was one thing that I was to be honest with you, I was a little bit concerned when I quit playing ball, where I was basically paid to stay in shape, or if I wasn't in shape, I couldn't get paid. And so going to grad school, and when I was in school, I would get up at 5 a.m. every morning, get a run in, go to the gym, because I knew school would be demanding and I'd have classes and meetings and I'd be going all over the island, attending different conferences and so forth. I wanted to get my workouts in because I knew ultimately I didn't want to gain weight. I like to eat and I didn't want to gain weight. And I've kind of kept that up, just maintaining, working out I try to get 6 days a week. If I can't, 5 days a week. And then obviously on the weekends, if we could get out, go to the beach. Here in China, there's no beach around here, but in Japan we could. Go golfing, just staying active, going on bike rides. I think ultimately was every day trying to carve out an hour at least on the weekdays to get a workout in. Eating right, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily eating right. At some point in time, I may have to look at that and adjust my diet plan if I do gain weight and my workouts aren't kind of keeping the weight off. But for me, it's just been staying active and trying to get in the gym on a daily basis as much as I can.
Awesome. Yeah, discipline. 5 a.m. is early. So
and it could be a grind here in China when I had a 9 o'clock call, which is not bad. Sometimes it's 11 o'clock calls. So those could be a bit of a grind. Those will hurt your weeks if you have an 11 o'clock call and you have a 5 a.m. wake up. So at times you got to play around with those workouts, maybe do them at lunch and so forth.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think it's cool for you to have that learning how to balance going from this is what I'm doing for a living, I'm getting paid, and now I'm actually in an office and maybe on a court, but like the lifestyle is just a drastic pivot in that sense. So
it's a lot more sitting, and it is, I mean, mentally, as much as physically, mentally, I think it really helps me just to take a break, sweat, get my blood flowing, put on something on TV to watch and just kind of get your mind off of things. I do feel 1 hour a day. I mean, that's something that everybody should be able to carve out of just to do the same thing and get going and get the blood flowing a little bit.
You had said earlier that there was no specific career pathway, that it was identical, if you will, for students that are possibly considering a career in the MBA or ops for that matter. Is there any advice you could give to them about pursuing a career in the MBA and possibly getting into operations, even at the entry level, and what that process might look like?
So I would, and going back to my experience, I had no idea this role existed. When I was hawking gearboxes in Tokyo, I had no idea the MBA had an international office focused on Europe and Asia and so forth. I would say people should absolutely keep up to date in the sports industry if they're really into it. Look at the MBA career. The website, the NFL, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, European football. Look at the jobs that are being offered. And of course, you have kind of the necessary corporate positions like HR and finance and accounting and legal, but global marketing partnerships. Well, what is that? Well, it's working with other companies to help them enhance their brand image and help and also drive revenue for your company, your sports, your sports, it's NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. So, what type of skill sets and abilities do you need to work in global marketing partnerships? Same goes for digital. What type of experiences do you need to be on the content creating team? We have a team that creates specific content for the Chinese market based off the NBA and the season and the players. And so what type of experiences do you need to do that in New York or India or China? Television, what type of experiences do you need, and connections and network do you need? And is that something that you really want to get into? Working with, in China, it would be CCTV, in the United States, it'd be ESPN, and displaying and distributing our games. And so there's, going back to it, I didn't realize it was this in depth and intricate, but I think people that are pursuing the opportunity to work in sports in the United States or abroad just need do your research and see what opportunities there are and what your interests are. And if you have those interests, you have those experiences that are needed. And then if you don't, what can you do? And maybe you're not going to start with the MBA right away. Maybe you can start doing some small things. Maybe at UF, maybe at Santa Fe Community College, maybe at, as an intern in the summertime. You can start doing things to get some experience, and also, equally importantly, start connecting with people that have connections and influences that can help you achieve those goals of getting hired in the NBA or NFL or Major League.
Okay. And speaking of which, connecting with those that might have the opportunities to help the students, is there a specific way that our students could connect with you online or through social media or other methods possibly?
So I'm on LinkedIn, and that's fine. Also, you're welcome to share my email address. I'm okay with that as well. And this is what I did to kind of work my way into, to work in the NBA, starting with Sumito Heavy Industries, but now the NBA. And I understand that students have questions and they have interests, and they're not sure about certain things, or maybe they want to meet certain people. And, that's what I did, 13, 14 years ago. I'm happy to be supportive of students pursuing the same thing.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that. So now, with that said, on Voices from the Field, we also like to have a little fun. And we have this rapid fire Q&A session that is chock full of lighthearted questions. So with that, Shelley, would you like to?
I don't think Gabby didn't mention that, but that's okay.
She did not.
It's one of those things where if I tell you right away, I just call it fire away questions. They're really simple. They're like, for instance, the first one is your first job. So they're really just to get to know you. You can pass on anyone you want. And I have a timer for 1 minute, and we'll see how many you get through. But don't feel like you can have to overthink it or have a perfect answer. They're all lighthearted.
They're fun, yeah.
Okay, I'm a slow thinker. Let's see how this goes.
Okay, let me get the timer started. All right, here we go. First job.
Umpire, Little League Baseball.
LinkedIn or Twitter?
LinkedIn.
Favorite time of day?
Morning.
When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I want to be a pitcher for at that time, California Angels.
Sweet.
Name 2 daily habits.
I work out and I eat lunch at 12:30.
Okay. What's the most unusual thing you've ever eaten?
I'm not sure if I want to say this live, so I'll pass.
Okay, skip. You want to skip it? Okay.
Yeah.
Netflix, Prime Video, or cable?
Netflix.
Favorite zoo animal?
Giraffe.
What was the last book you read?
I'm reading a book now called Pachinko. I'm not sure if that counts or not.
Perfect. Mountains or beaches?
Beach.
Current hobby?
Golf.
Okay.
And timer's up, but we'll give you one more. Favorite type of food?
I love, if you have a country's food, I'd say Japanese, and in Japan, I love sushi or sashimi.
Perfect.
Nice. Well, that's it. Thank you for participating. We appreciate that impromptu round.
That was easy. Yeah. That
was good. I'm all right with those.
Good. We figured you'd be okay with it. So, well, with that said, thank you, Greg, for joining us today and taking the time to share your professional endeavors. I am certain that the University of Florida Department of Sport Management students, faculty, and alumni appreciate and value your thoughts today. But with that being said, before we depart, I have one last question. If you could step into the shoes of a UF sports management or UF community student, what would you have asked yourself that I did not tonight?
That's a good question, because I thought the questions that you asked were very good and very relevant to my what I'm doing and what I did to get here. I still think students, I'm not sure if this is a direct answer to your question, but students are, currently now it's more difficult than ever with COVID and kind of figuring you can't go to class and you're doing things on Zoom, and maybe those internships aren't going to happen like they were supposed to. But I'd still, the questions that you asked are very relevant, I think, for many of the students. What is it? What are the steps? What are the things I need to think about that I haven't thought about in order to achieve opportunities with the MBA or to achieve my career pathways and goals? And so I think you hit most of those. Again, not sure if I answered your question correctly.
No, you absolutely did. So I appreciate the insight. And I think you bringing up COVID is very relevant, and it's difficult right now. And I think it's more difficult than ever. So students need to go out of their way to really attract the attention of organizations that they're trying to, seek employment with. And these kind of professional development talks are very helpful and insightful. And that's why we do them, obviously, so they can gain some additional insight. On what do I need to be doing to separate myself, or think about opportunities that maybe weren't on my radar prior to this? Because we've been really encouraging them to be flexible. And that seems like the tone of this is think outside the box, look elsewhere for potential opportunities. You might be surprised what you find. So your message was well received tonight, Greg. I really appreciate that.
And I would say, and I don't know what the answer is, but with COVID and issues like this, opportunities that nobody ever thought of will come out of it. And and just, I think, stay ready, stay prepared, really kind of hone in. It's an opportunity to hone in skill sets or knowledge, in terms of reading and educating yourself to prepare yourself when we go on the other end of COVID and life comes back to some normalcy.
Yeah, no, it's a great parting message. So I appreciate that. So once again, thank you again, Greg, for your insight and time this evening. We are your hosts, Brian Avery.
And Shelley Lyle. Go Gators.
Go Gators. There we go.
Gators.